What's going on, Jays Nation? We need to have a serious conversation right now about the future of this team and one of the biggest decisions the front office is facing this winter. Bichette is a free agent, and there's a growing push for Toronto to bring him back on a massive deal. We're talking 7 years, $210 million. That's the same contract Dylan Cease just signed, and now the question is whether the Blue Jays should commit that kind of money to keep their homegrown shortstop in Toronto. This isn't just about dollars and stats. This is about identity, roster construction, and whether locking up Bichette long-term is the right move for a team trying to win championships. Before we dive in, do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe if you're not already part of this community, because we're breaking down every major decision this organization faces, and I need you here with us for all of it. Let's get into this. The Blue Jays have already made their statement signing this offseason. Dylan Cease on a 7-year, $210 million deal was massive, and it showed the league that Toronto is willing to spend to compete. That came after they locked up Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to a 14-year, $500 million extension last April, which was one of the biggest contracts in baseball history. So it's not like this organization is scared to hand out huge money when they believe in a player. The question now is whether Bichette deserves to be the next guy to get that kind of commitment. And that's where things get complicated. Let's start with what Bichette brings to the table, because there's no denying his production when he's healthy and locked in. He slashed .311, .357, .483 this past season with 18 home runs and 94 RBIs. Those are legitimate all-star numbers. He's a two-time all-star who has spent his entire 7-year career in Toronto, and he's been a cornerstone of this lineup since he broke into the league. When Bichette is clicking, he's one of the best contact hitters in baseball, with the ability to drive the ball to all fields and create offense from the shortstop position. That's valuable, especially when you consider how hard it is to find offensive production from middle infield spots. The guy can hit, there's no question about that. But here's where the conversation gets tougher. Is Bichette worth 7 years and $210 million? That's $30 million per year for a player who will be entering his age 28 season. You're not just paying for what he's done. You're betting on what he'll do over the next 7 years, and that's where risk comes into play. Bichette has dealt with injuries throughout his career, and while he's been durable recently, shortstop is a physically demanding position. How confident can you be that he'll maintain this level of production deep into his 30s? How confident can you be that his body holds up over the length of that contract? These are the questions Toronto's front office has to wrestle with before they commit that kind of money. There's another layer to this that we need to talk about, and it's roster construction. The Blue Jays already have Vladimir Guerrero locked up long-term on a monster deal. They just gave Dylan Cease a massive contract. If they bring back Bichette on another $210 million commitment, you're looking at 3 players eating up a huge chunk of the payroll for the next several years. That limits flexibility. That makes it harder to add pieces through free agency or make moves at the trade deadline. And if any of those contracts don't age well, you're stuck with limited options to fix the roster. That's the reality of big money deals in today's game. They can elevate your team when they work, but they can cripple your flexibility when they don't. Now, let's talk about the alternatives, because this isn't a situation where Bichette is the only option. Toronto has been heavily linked to Kyle Tucker, who is arguably the best outfielder available this offseason. Tucker does everything at an elite level, and if the Blue Jays are looking for another big bat, he's a legitimate difference maker. They've also been connected to Cody Bellinger, who just had his best season in years and could slide into the outfield while providing elite defense and power. And here's the kicker. If Toronto decides not to re-sign Bichette, they already have a replacement in-house. Andres Jimenez can play shortstop full-time, and while he's not the offensive threat Bichette is, he's an elite defender who won't hurt you at the plate. That opens up payroll flexibility to pursue other positions of need, whether that's adding another outfielder, bolstering the bullpen, or keeping money available for future moves. The bullpen is another area worth mentioning here. Toronto's starting rotation is loaded after the Cease signing, and with Shane Bieber deciding not to opt out, they might actually have too many starters. That creates trade possibilities where the Blue Jays could flip a starter for bullpen help or other roster upgrades. But their biggest need right now is adding another impact bat to the lineup, whether that's Bichette, Tucker, Bellinger, or someone else. Toronto needs offensive reinforcement if they want to compete with the best teams in the American League. The question is whether spending $210 million on Bichette is the smartest way to address that need, or if they'd be better off spreading that money across multiple players. Here's my take on this whole situation. Bo Bichette is a really good player. He's been a consistent producer when healthy, and there's value in keeping a homegrown star who knows the organization and has chemistry with the roster. But $210 million is a massive commitment, and I'm not convinced he's worth that price tag when you factor in injury history, positional concerns, and what else is available on the market. If Toronto can get him for less, maybe 6 years, around 160 to 180 million, that's a different conversation. But at 7 years and 210, I think there are better ways to allocate that money. Think about what Tucker or Bellinger could do for this lineup. Tucker is a five-tool player who impacts the game in every facet. He's younger than Bichette. He plays a less demanding defensive position, and he's coming off multiple elite seasons. Bellinger just proved he's back to being an MVP caliber player, and he can play multiple positions while providing gold glove defense. Either of those guys could transform Toronto's outfield and give the Blue Jays another legitimate superstar in the middle of their order. And if you go that route, you still have Jimenez at shortstop, which isn't a disaster by any means. He won't put up Bichette's offensive numbers, but he won't kill you either, and his defense is legitimately elite. The other thing to consider is what this move signals about Toronto's long-term vision. If they bring back Bichette on this deal, they're doubling down on the current core and betting that this group can win championships over the next few years. If they let him walk and pivot to Tucker or Bellinger, they're reshaping the roster and prioritizing flexibility. Both approaches have merit, but they lead to very different futures. The front office has to decide which path gives them the best chance to compete, not just next year, but for the next 5 to 7 years. One more thing worth mentioning is the market dynamics here. Bichette is going to have suitors. He's one of the top free agents available, and teams looking for offensive help at shortstop are going to throw money at him. If Toronto hesitates or tries to lowball him, they risk losing him to a division rival or another contender. That creates urgency, but it also creates pressure to overpay. The Blue Jays can't let fear of losing him drive them into a bad contract. They have to evaluate this objectively and make the decision that's best for the organization, even if it means letting a fan favorite walk. So where does that leave us? The Blue Jays are at a crossroads with Bo Bichette. They can bring him back on a massive deal and keep the continuity with their current core, or they can pivot to other options and reshape the roster in a way that might give them more long-term flexibility. There's no perfect answer here. It's a gamble either way, but if I'm running the front office, I'm exploring every option before I commit $210 million to Bichette. I want to know what Tucker would cost. I want to know what Bellinger would cost. I want to know if there are other creative ways to improve this roster without locking myself into a contract that could become problematic 3 or 4 years down the line. Jays Nation, this is the biggest question facing the Blue Jays right now outside of the Dylan Cease signing. What they decide to do with Bo Bichette will shape this team for years to come, and we're going to be here covering every development as it happens. Hit that like button, drop a subscribe, and stay locked in with us because the next few weeks are going to be huge for this organization. Thanks for being here. Let's go Blue Jays.